Hello and welcome to this basic tutorial on how to mix distorted guitars in Reaper. Today we're going to talk about grouping our tracks and panning them, and then finally equalizing our guitar tracks. So first thing first, here is the project file for my latest original song called Redemption. That's what we're going to work with today. I'm going to show you how I've been doing things and just my way of doing things. Remember that there's always loads of different ways you can do these things. There's no one correct answer to everything. Something works for some people, some guitars work differently, some guitars sound differently, and so on. So the first thing we're going to look at is grouping our tracks. As you can see here, these two guitar tracks are grouped underneath this master guitar track, which I've called Guitars Distortion 352, just so I can remember which preset I'm using on my XFX. So in order to show you how to group your tracks, let's just open up a new project tab. Here we have an empty project in Reaper. I should probably mention that I'm using kind of an old interface on Reaper. You can change that by going to Options and Themes, and I'm using the default 3.0 theme. It works a lot better in my opinion. It's a lot more clean. So let's create a couple of tracks here. 3 new tracks. Call this one Guitars Master, and then we'll have left and right. So let's say now that we want to group these two tracks into this one. What you're going to do then is just select this one, hold Control, select this one, and then simply click and drag until you get this slightly shorter blue line, and release, and there you go. Just group your tracks. What you're going to do next is record your guitar tracks. Record one track for the right channel, one for the left channel, and then you can always pan them out. Let's just pan them 100% to each side. And as you can see in my project, I've given them specific colors. That's just so it makes it easier to see what is what in my project. So what you have to do then is just right click here, go to track color, set to custom or random color. I like to color my guitar tracks red. Do the same thing for this one, red, and there you go. So now everything that you record will be red. Alright, let's get back here and have a look at the panning of the guitars. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people like to pan their guitars 60% to each side, some people like to pan them 40% to 80%. I've been experimenting with this over the years, and I found that what works best for me is simply panning them 100% to each side. Now this sets some quite high requirements for tightness in your playing. If your playing isn't really tight and is perhaps a bit sloppy, then you shouldn't be panning them 100% to each side, because that really reveals any little mistake in your timing. So do what you feel works best for you. What works best for me is, like I said, 100% to each side. And I only use 2 tracks. A lot of people ask me if I quad track, that is using 4 guitar tracks, or triple track, or whatever. I've also been experimenting with that over the years, and I've never gotten it to work for me. So my advice to you is simply use 2 tracks, as it's a lot easier to get a satisfying result using only 2 tracks. And it's good enough to get some really good tones as well. And always make sure that the level stays the same. If you don't have the same level in both the channels, then it won't be really pleasant to listen to. And then to our final stage, which is the mixing. Right now, as you can see, I've disabled the FX on our guitar tracks. So let's solo them. That means that we can only hear these tracks. And as you can see, when I've grouped my tracks together, I've not applied any effects to these separate guitar tracks. They're both running into this track, and I've applied my effects here. That way you don't have to apply twice as many effect instances and use lots of more processing power. And also when I solo this track, you can see that this whole group gets soloed. So let's have a listen. As you can hear, it sounds pretty okay. Some of you will think that it sounds good, some of you will think that it sounds like shit. In my opinion, it sounds like a good starting point to get a good tone, but as you can hear, it's kind of fizzy, doesn't really have any punch to it, and it sounds kind of untreated. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna look at the way I have EQ'd my tracks here. I'm using 2 equalizers. Some people like to put everything into one equalizer. I think that gets kind of messy sometimes, so I just use 2. And let's hear the difference with only the first equalizer. I'm gonna play the track and I'm gonna turn it on while it's running. Now some of you will probably think, why the hell did you cut out so much treble from the sound? Well, that's simply because when you're mixing guitars that are going to fit in with bass guitars, lead guitars, vocals perhaps, and drums, cymbals, you need a guitar that doesn't occupy all of the frequencies, because it's supposed to be a part of the whole sound. It's not supposed to conquer everything. So what this means is that when you're mixing a guitar, either for live sound or for CD production, you're going to make a guitar sound that does not sound perfect on its own, because the other sounds are going to be there to complete the whole sound. You're going to need to design a guitar tone that sounds good in context with the whole band. So what I've done here on my first equalizer, let's have a look at band number 1, which is this one. 72.5 Hertz all the way down. It's a low shelf, and that's just to cut out the unnecessary bass from the guitar. Remember that the deepest bass in the guitar is always supposed to be handled by the actual bass guitar. And our next band is set 120 Hertz, and that is to give the guitar a lot more punch, make it slightly more bassy, but not with a rumbly low bass down here. And next band, which is this one, high shelf, at about 6.2 kilohertz, and that is to cut out all the unnecessary high frequencies. So we can hear without this band and with this band. I'm just gonna play the track and switch this button. Let's hear. Now this is perhaps one of the most important things to do to your guitar tone in order to make it sound less digital, more organic, and fit better into the mix. If we don't cut out these high frequencies, then they're going to collide with the cymbals and they're just going to sound unnatural and horrible. And our fourth band right here, it's just a slight boost at 1 kilohertz. Now this is one of the typical cutting through frequencies, which you use simply to make the guitars pop out a little bit more in the mix. You have to be careful with these 1 to around 3 kilohertz frequencies, because they are going to sound quite painful if you boost them too much. And then we have finally our fifth band here, which is a cut around 198 kilohertz, just to remove some of the mud from our guitars. It just makes it a little bit clearer. And then for our next EQ, just a simple boost at 615 Hertz. That's also one of the kind of cutting through frequencies. Why do I say sequences? Frequencies. And basically helps the guitar to pop out a bit more. We can hear it with and without it. Now this is a good example of something that I'm doing to the guitar tone which makes it sound worse on its own, but in context with the whole band it makes it pop out more, and it's also a typical frequency that you may have to boost when you're mixing kind of gent, low tuning 7-string guitars and so on. And that's about it for the equalization. You can have a listen with the rest of the band. Sounds pretty good to me. There is one thing I have to bring up while we're doing this, and that is one mistake that a lot of people make. It might be that you're thinking, well, now I'm just going to record my own guitars and use the exact same equalizations and get the exact same tone. Well, that is not true. Every guitar tone is different, and just because I'm boosting at 120 Hz here doesn't mean that you have to boost at 120 Hz, because it depends on the material that you're recording. Let's say that you're recording an amp that already has a high boost at 120 Hz, and then you're boosting it even more. It might become too much. So the most important thing of this lesson is simply to use your ears whenever you're mixing. Always use your ears. There is no rule that applies for absolutely everything. Sometimes the guitar tone you're recording will already be really filtered off at the high end, so we won't have to cut anything. Sometimes you'll even have to add higher frequencies because the guitar tone is too dull. There is no way you can tell without actually listening to it. And of course, spending years and years practicing this will make you a lot better at it. So that pretty much concludes this tutorial. It's just a really basic one. I'm not gonna go really into depth in anything yet. If you have any requests for other tutorials, let me know. I'm probably going to make a separate tutorial on how to mix your bass, how to set up Superior Drummer, and how to properly mix the lead guitars. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you. Bye.